Hey, there's no need to stress. Here's your teacher tip in 5 minutes or less. I'm Educator Barnes, and today I'm going to give you another tip about building relationships with students. We all know when you build strong relationships with students, it helps with classroom management and it also helps with delivering content. And my tip today is to use read-alouds. For the majority of my career, I've been a middle school English teacher. So you may think that this tip is only for teachers who are elementary teachers that teach reading or middle school or high school teachers that teach English, but this tip is for everybody. Literacy is an everybody skill. In every content area, we teach vocabulary. If you're in physical education, you may be teaching terms like kick, punt, pass. Every content area has vocabulary. So there is no excuse for anyone to feel like they can't read a book in class. Typically, when I use read-alouds with secondary students, be it middle school or high school students, I would do it at the beginning of class or the end of class. If I did it at the beginning of class, that's because I knew these students were coming from a class, or when I was teaching high school, they were coming straight from the cafeteria, and they needed some time to settle down. Or at the end of class, because sometimes students just go through their materials so fast that you have extra time. And we all know that in certain schools, most schools, you have principals who are like, you must teach from bell to bell, especially in secondary school. So you never want to be caught not teaching. So this was a good way to fill that time, but also build relationships with students, because when I would read these read-alouds, we would have conversation and I would learn things about students. So I'm going to show you 3 books that I used when I was a middle school English teacher that help with that. Now, I know I have a little baby face, but I'm a bit older than you may think. So some of these books are not brand new books, but they will still serve a good purpose, or maybe jog your mind to find books that work for your area. One of the books I used was World's Dumbest Laws. This is a book of a whole bunch of laws that are still in the book, as of when this book was published, that really didn't make any sense. We really related it back to school rules and how there's probably a school rule for that because somebody was making that offense. And this way, I found different information about students was helping make strong relationships. Another book I would use was Bad Pets on the Loose. Students thought this book was hilarious. And this book was the book that if we actually didn't have extra time to read it, students would be really mad. They're like, Mrs. Barnes, we've gone the whole week and we haven't read a chapter of this book. So students really like this book. And then with high school students, I used Vlad the Impaler, the real Count Dracula. If you know anything about Vlad the Impaler, I mean, the word impaler is in the title, it can be a bit gory, so I saved it for high school students, but they really love learning about the story behind what was used to make Dracula and some of these vampire stories. So when I had extra time, I would read part of this. It wasn't tied to our regular curriculum. And then we was kind of just talk. It was like a free form discussion. And then the bell would ring as soon as we leave, or I would start class that way. And there was so much information I just learned from students, because when you read a book aloud, every single student in that classroom has the opportunity to have the same information, which means every student can contribute. Because sometimes when you do things like current events or other topics, every student in the class doesn't have the information. Therefore, they might not feel comfortable to participate in the discussion. But when you're using a read aloud and you share it with everyone, now everyone has the same base level, and then we can have a conversation about it. And through that conversation, students will share, well, because of how I was raised, or what my mom said, or what my grandmother said, or what I think this way. And that information helps build a connection. And when you have the connection with students, when you have to redirect their behavior, they're more likely to respond. And I say this all the time, but read alouds, it's for everyone. It's for younger humans and older humans. So don't ever think that your students are too old, and I'm probably saying this directly to high school students, to use a read aloud. So stay tuned for another teacher tip.